In this episode, I'm going to share another peek at the Invincible Solopreneurs workshop that I hosted a couple of months ago. And this time I want to talk about two of the very unique things about building your own lifestyle business. One is that it can be centered entirely around you and your ideal life. The other is that you can focus on the type of customers that you really would prefer to be working with. I'm Larry Cornett, and this is Invincible Solopreneurs. So on February 26th, 2024, I hosted the Invincible Solopreneurs workshop, Build a Lifestyle Business to Escape Your 9-to-5 Job. In the last podcast episode, I was really talking about some of the easiest businesses that you can start when you're still an employee. And I shared some examples of how I did that. I shared some examples from a few of my colleagues and clients who've been able to do this. This time I want to talk about something that's a little bit different. So what is different about being a solopreneur and about being a lifestyle business owner versus being an employee or being an entrepreneur who has to build a business with employees and investors, and maybe you have to take out loans, who knows. This is one of the rare opportunities to design your work around your life. We rarely get this chance. I know I sure didn't. I think I had a tech industry career that was about 20 years or so, dating way back to 93. And I had jobs before that, jobs when I was in high school and college and things like that, where I certainly didn't get to make a decision about how I worked. But in the tech industry, I worked at IBM, Apple, eBay, Yahoo, various startups. And again, I didn't get to decide when and where I was going to work or what I was going to work on. I had no control over that because it's not my company. And even with my startup, which was my company, but it was more of the entrepreneurial model, right? So I had raised funding from investors. I hired employees. We had the business model we were working on. I didn't have complete control over that. And you don't. If you have investors and you have employees, it changes the nature of your business and the way you do things. Being a solopreneur is completely different. It's one of the rare chances that you have to design your life first, your ideal lifestyle, the way you want to live your life, and then think about, what business could support that? And I'm not talking about the lifestyles of the rich and shameless. That's not what I mean by lifestyle. So this is meant to be realistic. This is assuming you still need to work and to earn money to make a living, and you'll probably be working on your business every week, maybe even every day. Not everybody does, but you might be working every day. But you get to decide how much you want to work. Do you want to work 8-hour days? Do you want to work 12-hour days? Maybe you want to work really hard for a few days, then take a long weekend. Some people do. I've changed the nature of how I work after becoming a solopreneur. Very different than my previous life. And I've structured through day theming and time blocking. And I think I've talked about this before, but Mondays, for example, is more of my community days. And so on Mondays, I have meetings with my community. I teach the workshops, things like that. Tuesday is my writing day. So that's when I do writing and I prepare stuff for this podcast, for example. And I don't have other meetings. I don't do client meetings because I really need the time to focus. It's really hard to do this. And so I spend the whole day doing it. Wednesdays, I take off. This is new. I've done this probably for the last 6 months or so, but I have decided to take Wednesdays off and I do things with my wife. I go hiking, we go skiing in the winter. We just take the day off. I don't do client calls. I don't do meetings. And then I come back and work on Thursday and Friday. I have a lot of client meetings on Thursdays and Fridays. And on the weekend, I tend to do some catch up on business stuff like accounting and strategy work and planning and stuff like that. But mostly it's time with my family. So you get to decide that. And you get to decide where you work, which is a big issue now. There has been a push for a return to office. A lot of companies that promise that employees could work remotely are reneging on those deals, and they're trying to pull people back into the office. Some are doing it a few days a week. Some are even saying, no, you're going to be in the office 5 days a week, or you're going to have to move. I have a friend who has worked remotely for a large corporation for decades, successfully, been a great employee, suddenly told, you need to move. You need to move to a new state and a city because we want you in an office and we're consolidating offices. So after all this time, come back to an office. You get to decide who you spend your time with. You don't get to do that as an employee. You don't get to choose your coworkers. You don't get to choose your boss, right? So you report to a manager or a boss or whoever it is, and you have your coworkers, and that's who you spend your time with when you're at work. It's different when you're a solopreneur. I partner with people. I work with other people. But I consciously make that decision. I decide who I'm going to work with. And I also am pretty careful about the clients I work with. Not everybody's a fit. I'm not a fit for everybody, and not everybody's a fit for me. And sometimes there are things that happen, right, where it's like, hey, we thought this was going to work out, but it's not. And you just part and go your different ways. We were talking about this online in a group, and somebody said, yeah, when you're a solopreneur, you could fire a client if you have to. And people are like, no, you can't. It's the same. It's like having a boss. Your client is your boss. And that is absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. I've been in companies where I wish I could have fired my boss, but I was stuck with that boss. And so either I left the company or I sucked it up and just put up with it. But if you're running a smart business, you don't have just one major client who's running your life. You have multiple clients. And so if one client is not a good fit, you just say, hey, let's just not work together anymore, right? So you move on, find other clients. The other big thing, which has been made possible by being a solopreneur, and is why I did it, you get to decide where you live. So when I worked in the tech industry, I was in Silicon Valley. I had to live in the Bay Area. This is pre-pandemic, pre-really remote work. So I had to live in the Bay Area, which is incredibly expensive. It's the most expensive housing market on the planet, I think. Can't really go very far if you have to commute to work every day. And then I used to commute anywhere between 2 to 4 hours every day. I've talked about this before. It was a nightmare. It's normally an hour to work and an hour home. So that's 2 hours. Already pretty horrible. But there were times that we would have an accident on the freeway, multiple accidents on the freeways. And it took me 2 hours to get to work. And then lo and behold, I went home and there was another big accident and it took me 2 hours to get home. That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad when you're spending 4 hours of your life on a freeway. So I wanted to escape that. I wanted to get away from that city life and living on the freeway, which we had done for, almost 20 years, maybe longer. And we wanted to live in the mountains. We wanted to be near a forest. We wanted to be able to go hiking, wanted to be able to go skiing, that kind of stuff. Have our kids living somewhere where the air was really clean, fresh air. But I knew coming up to where we live now that I would not be able to get a job in the tech industry anymore. And I was going to have to do something different. And I knew that if I formed a traditional company and had employees, at least at this time that I was doing this, I was going to have to get office space. I'd have to go commute to the office and sit and work with my employees throughout the day. And I was kind of tired of driving to an office. I was tired of being forced to go work somewhere. And I said, nope, I'm going to be a solopreneur. And so I got to decide where I want to live. And that's only possible because I became a solopreneur. And that's why I was teaching this workshop. The whole point of this workshop is escaping the 9 to 5 and escaping the lifestyle that maybe you've grown weary of. Maybe you're really tired of it. I talk with people that are in the midpoint of their career at maybe the last part of their career, kind of last few years. And they're like, I'm just tired of this. I'm tired of being told how to work and where to work and when to work. And I want to do something different. And so that's why I taught this workshop. It's like, there is a path forward. There is a different way to do it. So one of the exercises that I shared during the workshop, and it was in the homework, was to describe your ideal day. This is really helpful because you rarely get to think of it this way. But thinking about how you start your day, what your day is like, and how you end your days, if you are fully in control. And if you're a solopreneur, you are fully in control. So you get to decide when you wake up in the morning. I have some friends who are solopreneurs that say, I don't get up until afternoon. Some people like to sleep in. I'm a morning person, so I still get up pretty early. I tend to wake up between 6 and 7, even without an alarm clock. But they say, I don't want to start until noon. So I don't wake up until kind of midday. Could not do that when I was an employee. I'll tell you that right now. So when do you want to wake up? Are you a morning person? Are you a night person? You get to decide. What do you do when you first wake up? Do you want to go work out? Do you want to do like I do? I make my coffee and then I sit in a chair in my living room, sometimes next to the fire in the wintertime, and I journal. I write in my journal every morning while I'm enjoying my coffee before I touch my phone. And that's how I start my day. I don't want the stress of news and dealing with messages and all that kind of stuff. I want to sit and think and write down creative thoughts about life and about my business and just random stuff that pops into my head and get it into a journal. And then when I'm done, then I'll check messages and see what my calendar looks like for the day and stuff like that. So what would you like to do and how would you like to spend your mornings? I like to have a slow morning and I like to do most of my work in the afternoon. I like to have time to work out. I want to have lunch with my wife. So think about that. How would you spend your day? And when do you want your workday to end? Some people like to work later, and I'll often do that. I'll kind of have dinner with my wife, we'll go for a walk, and then I'll work until 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And it's the way I do it. I kind of do some work in the middle of the day, take a break, do work at night. Maybe you want to end at 5 and be done for the day. That's fine. And then, how do you want to spend your evenings? When do you want to go to bed? This is all under your control. So why not take advantage of doing this, of defining your ideal day? And so I had people do this and expand it out to their ideal week. Like, what do you want to do on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, all the way through Saturday? How do you want to spend your time? What do you want to do every day? How do you want those blocks of time to be allocated? And then we dove into what I call the toolbox of you. So I've talked about this before for my career folks. I've definitely discussed this before, and we just actually talked about this yesterday in the job search workshop that I taught for my Invincible Career people. The toolbox of you are really the capabilities that you've acquired over your entire lifetime. And some you've already had. So it's like the talents that you naturally have. These are natural talents that you've probably had since birth, that your parents are probably aware of, that you may remember. There's physical advantages that you have. Maybe you're a high energy kind of person that doesn't tire easily. Who knows, right? Your cognitive intelligence, your emotional intelligence, personality, knowledge you've acquired, skills you've acquired, the experience that you've gained through life and through work. And then we dove into the Ikigai model, which comes from the Japanese word. It's all about your reason for being, your purpose. And some people like it, some people don't. But I think it's a useful framework to think about what would you do if you had the luxury of focusing on doing work that you love, work that you're great at doing, stuff you can get paid to do, and stuff that is necessary, that's required by the world, that people want. So it is looking at this intersection, kind of like a Venn diagram, but with 4 circles. So we started with talking about what you love. And this is really about everything. This isn't about just professional. It's also personal. And it's not just about things you're good at doing. So this is, what do you love doing? If you look back on your entire life, you look at your work history, and don't worry about whether you're good at it or not. Don't worry about whether you get paid to do it or not. And so it's moments of flow. Like, when do you go into a flow state and lose track of time? What have you enjoyed most personally? What have you enjoyed most during your work career? What would you do if you didn't have to worry about money? What would you do that you love it? Getting input from really close friends, people that know you well, getting input from people that know you for a long time. This is helpful. So looking back at your childhood, talking with parents, talking with siblings, what did they notice about you that you've always loved doing? If you have a life partner, what do they know about you? What do you love doing? Sometimes you're not even aware of it. There are things you're going to be aware of and there are things you're not. So it's creating this huge list and just brainstorming and getting it all out of your head about what you love. Then the next list is what you're great at doing. So this is different. You could be great at doing something, but you don't like it. You don't enjoy it. I gave the example yesterday. It's like, I'm pretty good at working in spreadsheets. I had to do a lot of it during my career. I still do a lot of stuff in spreadsheets. I don't love it. I don't enjoy it. But I'm pretty good at it. I can get that done. So then looking at this is a list of stuff that your natural talents, stuff that you're undeniably great at, right? You just are. Maybe you have a great memory. Maybe you've always been really good at persuading people. Who knows? And then thinking about your advantages. What are your unfair advantages? And it could be physical, cognitive, emotional. Maybe you're smarter than average. That's an advantage. The knowledge that you've acquired, thinking back on life, your education, if you have an advanced education, what you've learned at work, marketable skills, all of your work experience, anything that provides support for your expertise, things that past bosses have said, hey, you're great at doing this, and it could be in a performance review, things that your peers or colleagues, coworkers have noticed that they think you're great at. Really thinking about those things that come easily to you that maybe you don't even notice anymore. It's like oxygen to you. But if you talk with your parents, you talk with your partner, your close friends, they'll point it out. They're like, hey, you've always been great at this. And most people aren't. So again, make that huge list of all the things you're great at doing. And then there's talking about, what does the world need? So when you're thinking about building a business, and that's the whole point of this workshop of becoming a solopreneur, is you're trying to create something, whether it's a good or a service or both, that is needed by the world. Because if it's not needed, no one's going to buy it. No one's going to want it. So you could be really great at something, but the world doesn't need it. Or you could really enjoy something, but no one else wants it. So you're trying to look at this intersection of what you're good at, what you enjoy, and what the world needs. So what are the real problems you could solve for people? How could you do that better than what's out there today, or differently, more uniquely than an existing solution? I always tell people, try to focus on an evergreen need that is always existing with human beings, because that's going to be a business that lasts. If it's something that's a trend, it's okay, but just be prepared. You're probably going to have to pivot. Some people thought that NFTs were going to be a great thing for a business, and that fizzled out pretty quickly. I know some people are still trying to make it work. It is not what it used to be, and most people are not into NFTs anymore. But an evergreen need, right? People are always seeking love. People are always wanting to be happy. People are always struggling with being healthy and fit. People always need food. People always need to be entertained. There's a whole lot of stuff that are evergreen needs of being a human being. That's something you could think about. And then the last part is like, what can you get paid to do, right? What will someone actually pay you to provide? And who are the people that can afford it? So it's great to do something you love if you can get paid. And that's not so great if you're doing something you love if no one will pay you. So it's kind of important. And who are these people? Is it going to be individuals? So you're going to sell directly to people, or you're going to sell to companies? Some people will provide services to companies. Do you want to have a lower cost offer that more people would purchase, or do you want something that's a higher cost offer that you'd have fewer customers, fewer clients? Can you provide tiers of services? So you have some low cost stuff and higher cost stuff. Could people stay with you and grow with you and move from the low cost to the high cost? So thinking about that, like, who will actually pay you, buy your goods or services. And then we moved into the whys. Like, why do you want a business? Why do you want a business? What are the motivating factors? Why are you thinking about doing this? And people start businesses for a whole lot of different reasons. For example, maybe they hate their job. They've been doing their job for a while and they are just burned out and they are tired of doing it and they're thinking, I'll start a business. Or a boss. It's not so much the job, but they've had a few bad bosses and it's just they're kind of getting burned out. Maybe they want to make more money. Some people have jobs that don't pay that well. And I've seen people go from having kind of an average job and then moving into doing something different for themselves and making a lot more money. Quite a bit more money. Or they lost their job. So they've lost their job. They've been trying to find a new one. They're struggling. They're like, hey, I got to do something to make some money. I'm going to spin up a business. Or they want more flexibility in their life. So like if you have a lot of things that you need to take care of in your personal life, and this is happening to people that are caregivers, have children, or somebody they need to take care of at home, and their workplace is telling them, nope, you got to come back to the office. They're like, okay, it's time. I'm going to start a business where I can work from my home and I can provide the care I need for someone I love and I'm taking care of and not worry about being forced to go into an office. Some people want to build a business because they're trying to create a legacy. So they're going to create a business that they could pass down to their children, or they're going to create a business they could sell at some point and give the money to their children. It could be an inheritance. Try doing that with a job. You could have a job for 20, 30 years. You can't sell your job to somebody. You can't sell your job and provide that to your children. But if you built a really successful business, you could. For me, it was a mix of things. My first business that I created, oddly enough, it gave me more stability. It gave me more stability because I had been working in tech companies and startups that were being acquired and shut down and acquired. And I wanted stability of running my own business and I wanted more income. And I did. I made more money than I had my previous job. The second business that I created was really giving me a break from a really stressful job. I'd had kind of some bad managers and I was a little burned out. So I wanted to work for myself for a while. And as I mentioned earlier, my current business really is about freedom and flexibility. That's why I call myself a freedom coach. It lets me live the life I want. It lets me control my time. It lets me decide where I want to live and who I want to spend my time with. So more than anything, it's about that freedom and flexibility. We talked about the businesses, but I did that in the previous podcast. So what I think would be more interesting now, which is kind of related, is thinking about your ideal customer. Like, who is your ideal customer or client? So getting to build a business around your ideal life is part of the picture. And it's one of the wonderful things about being a solopreneur. So it's like, wow, I can live life on my terms. I can live life the way I want to if I run my own business and I'm calling the shots, right? Very related to that is the customer. Like, who are the people you want to serve? And being very careful about this so that you are spending time with people that you like. Who are the people you most want to help? You're passionate about helping these people. Some people build a business entirely around this. So it's like, I feel so passionate about this demographic, this type of person. I really want to help them. I know some people that do that with like educational coaching for children. They feel so passionate about it because they themselves had a learning disability and felt mistreated by the school system. So they're like, that was horrible. I want to solve that problem. I want to help children. Thinking about who are these people, can you imagine working with them every day? What if you had to do calls with them every day, or you had to meet with them in person every day, or whatever? Do you care about these people? It's hard to be working with a customer or client that you don't care about. It is. So thinking about that, do you like these people? Can they afford you? So that's a pretty important one. There can be customers that you're pretty passionate about, but they can't actually afford your services. And I was talking with a solopreneur about this a while ago, where they had a service they were creating for their business and they had exactly the idea that they wanted for it and they knew the revenue they needed from it. So they started connecting with what they thought was their ideal customer, their ideal audience, and time and again finding out they couldn't afford them, that the customer couldn't afford this person's services. And they're like, this is a problem. And it is. It's a huge problem, right? So it's like, okay, you have a couple of choices. Either you figure out how you can lower your prices if you want and change up your business model, or you sell something entirely different that isn't as expensive for you to deliver so you can afford to charge less for it, or you find a new customer, right? You might be targeting the wrong customer. And I've seen this even happen with larger businesses where they were targeting someone. It's like, that's not the decision maker. That's not the customer. They're not the ones who are going to sign the check and give you the money. You're talking to the wrong people. The other thing to think about is like, can you help them? So maybe you know who they are and you want to help them and you have something in mind, but can you actually help them? Can you provide what they need? Right? So that's an important part of this. On the flip side, just as important, who are the customers and clients that you want to avoid? And that may sound kind of strange, but there's probably some folks that you would rather not work with. Maybe you've experienced this in your previous jobs, your current job. You're like, man, we have these customers or clients and they drive me crazy. I just do not want to work with people like that. So think about that. Who are the people you'd rather not serve with your business? Are there businesses you don't want to sell to? I know some people like that they said, yeah, there's certain kinds of businesses I do not want to provide my services to. I don't believe in their business. I don't like their business model. I don't like what they stand for. I have a different moral compass than they do. Okay, you get to choose. So who are those businesses you don't want to work with? Are there customers that are going to be a pain to do business with? So it's like, I don't want to work with these people. They are really challenging. They're really demanding. They're rude. And hey, we've all experienced people like that. Or their behavior bothers you. There are people who tend to waste your time. Like I said, there's going to be people who can't afford you. There's going to be people you can't help. Or you just don't want to work with these kind of people. And so think about that. So there's going to be, who's your ideal customer that you think would be a dream customer to work with, and who are the people you'd rather avoid? This is all very important because later in your business, you're going to be very clearly trying to target these people with your services or your goods, and you're going to be thinking about marketing and branding, and all of this matters. You're going to want to attract the right customers, and you're going to want the wrong customers to kind of look at your stuff and say, no, not for me. And you're like, good, we're not for each other. So then I went into more details. So as you are thinking about this ideal customer, you're going to have to start identifying things about them, like what, if there's demographic information about them or behavioral information, what are the behaviors that are relevant for your business? The triggers that might lead them to you. And I've talked about this. There are seasonal triggers. So there's things that happen, like I had my goal workshop in January. That's a seasonal trigger. People are entering the new year. They're thinking about their resolutions. It's a good time to think about your goals and to learn how to set goals that you can actually accomplish. There's other seasonal triggers around season changes. The weather might make a difference for your business, or the holidays might make a difference. And there can be other triggers that are like they just had a birthday. Maybe they just turned 30 or 40, or they just had their first child. These are all triggers. So thinking about that. What are their motivations? What motivates them to look for you? What are their wants, their evergreen needs? How do they make buying decisions? Is it an emotional decision? Is it a financial decision? Is it more rational? What are their dreams? Because what you're selling to people isn't the thing, it's what the thing enables, right? So that's the whole sell the sizzle, not the steak. Or don't sell a drill, sell the fact that a drill can put a hole in the wall and you can hang a picture. So sell the fact that they can have pictures hung on their wall. You get the point. It's like, really, what are they trying to accomplish? So thinking about all that stuff, like who are they, their environment, their situation, their financial situation, you name it. And then really important, okay, so now you've defined your ideal customer and you're trying to get clear about who they are, what they're like, what they care about, you name it. Now you got to think about, well, where are these people? Where do my ideal customers spend their time? Where do they spend their time online? What platforms are they using? Are they on LinkedIn or are they on Facebook? Are they on Reddit or are they on Threads? Or are they on Instagram? Are they on YouTube? Where are they spending their time? Where can I reach them? Where do they spend their time in the real world? Where do you want to reach them? Are you looking for people that go to a gym? Are you trying to reach people who go to a supermarket? Where are you trying to find these people? And where can you start engaging with them? How are you going to engage with them? Are you going to do content marketing? Are you going to create ads? Are you going to take out an ad somewhere? Is there some chance where you can meet with them either online or in real life so you can get to learn more about them? What messaging resonates with people like this? How can you get their attention? So if you're going to show up online, you're going to show up in their feed, what message is going to get their attention so they stop scrolling and say, wait a second, this is interesting to me, right? So yeah, there's a little bit more that I covered. I won't have time to go into all of it today because this podcast is starting to run a little bit long. But if you want to read more and learn more about it, you can go to newsletter.invinciblesolopreneurs.com and you can check it out. I'm also going to be hosting this workshop again. This is Build a Lifestyle Business to Escape Your 9-to-5 Job. And what I had shared was how to transform your job description into a plan, into a business plan. So this was originally hosted on February 26th. I'm going to be hosting again, I believe, in August. So August 2024 will be the next time I host this. So if you subscribe to the newsletter, and if you follow me on social media, you can also go to larrycornett.coach, COACH. That links to all my stuff. You can follow me. And believe me, I talk about this stuff. I'll be posting and letting people know when the next workshop is coming up. So I hope this was helpful. I hope it gave you a little taste of what this Solopreneur workshop is like. And I hope you'll check it out and learn more about it. Until next time, I wish you the best of luck with building the business of your dreams.